Room 30. Signed. Committee 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 Room 30, 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 signed. Committee Room 30. 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 Committee Room 30. Signed. 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 Committee Room 30. Committee Room 30, signed. 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 Committee Room 30, Committee Room 30. Signed. 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 Committee Room 30. Committee Room 30. Sound. 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 Committee Room 30. Sound.
Can you just go back then to the agreed minutes?
Yeah. We're now in public session, members. I'm now going to move to item number 4, which is agreed minutes. Can I remind members that at our last meeting on the 26th of March, the committee agreed that I would approve the minutes of proceedings so they could be included in the inquiry report published on that day. So for members' information, a copy of the agreed minutes can be found at pages 64 to 71 of your meeting pack. Move on now to item number 5, matters arising. There are no matters arising, so we're going to move on now to item number 6, which is the Directive EU 2026-706 as regards measuring systems for electric vehicle supply equipment and compressed gas dispensers and electricity, gas and thermal energy meters. And we're going to receive departmental oral evidence. Just to inform members that this item will be recorded by Hansard. And can I now refer members to the relevant pages at page 7 to 62 of your meeting pack and pages 3 to 12 of your table papers. Members, on the 10th of April 2025, having considered legal advice and departmental oral evidence, the committee decided to monitor the proposal for this EU Act. Details of the committee's consideration of the proposal, including consideration of the provisionally agreed text, can be found at pages 8 and 9 of the meeting pack. An assessment of impact from the Department for the Economy on the published EU Act can be found at page 7 to 12 of your table pack, and the British Government's explanatory memorandum can be found at page 3 of the meeting pack. Can I inform members that in line with agreed processes, departmental officials were provided with questions in advance to be answered as part of the oral evidence session. Officials were also asked to share the responses in writing before the meeting, if possible. So these were emailed to members yesterday, and hard copies have been provided for members here today. Officials in the Department for the Economy stated that as this is a reserved area, the written answers were provided by the Head of Meteorology Policy in the British Government's Office for Product Safety and Standards. And likewise, just remind members that the committee will need to take a decision on whether to hold an inquiry into this published replacement EU Act, and will do so following the evidence session. We're just awaiting an individual from Hansard, members, so if you just give us a few minutes there, please. We're still awaiting members, someone from Hansard, so he's happy enough that we'll continue to move through the agenda and then come back, okay? So, we can move on to item number 7 if members are content. So can we refer members to your work planning documents at page 75 to 83 of the pack? Are members content to note the work planning document?
Yep.
Yes.
Yeah, Chair.
Okay. Item number 8, just inform members that there are 15 items of correspondence at page 86 to 168 of your meeting pack. I'm just going to draw your attention to a number of these items. So item 8.4, and it's on page 104, is a response from the British Government to the committee's letter issued during its inquiry into the regulation on the safety toys. Are members content to publish the response?
Content.
Content, thank you, members. Item 8.5, and it's page 119, and it's correspondence from the House of Lords European Affairs Committee regarding a call for evidence on its inquiry into dynamic alignment. The committee hasn't considered or reached a view on dynamic alignment. Therefore, are members content to take this matter back to their parties who may wish to respond? Yeah. Okay, thank you, members. And then item 8.15 is a copy of correspondence from the House of Lords NI Scrutiny Committee to the British Government regarding the detergents regulation. Are members content to share our inquiry report with the Lords Committee?
Content.
Content, thank you, members. Do members have any other comments on the remaining items of correspondence, or are you content to note?
Content.
Content?
Sorry, Chair, sorry,
Yes,
apologies. Item of, I think it's the, from the 20th of March 26 from the House of Lords, from us, particularly about SPS and emissions trading schemes and electricity agreement. I think there's quite a few areas of there that are of significant interest, and maybe we should be looking to further explore those when we go to Westminster.
Yes. What item's that, Steve? 8 point.
I've got it on page 119 of mine.
Page 119.
119. We'll put it on the note.
We'll put it on the note for members, and just the reference and the correspondence, so we can alert the members to that, Steve. And yes,
Yeah.
we can.
Just through the chair, I've been aware through the Finance Committee there's been quite a few sort of back and forth, and indeed to the Economy Committee, and we haven't necessarily seen all the correspondence that's going back and forth with the House of Lords.
Okay.
But there's quite a few questions about the emissions trading scheme, and bearing in mind that we've recently had the Alliance Minister has brought about the fact that we're sort of getting our ferries prices increased by 6% across the board. So there's quite a few bits of detail in here we need to be kept abreast of.
It's highlighted, Steve. Yes, thank you.
Yeah.
We now have the Hansard official here, so I'm just going to ask members if we can move back now to the evidence session, if that's okay. Back to item number 6.
Just bring them forward, ask them to come forward.
Yeah. Good morning and welcome. Can I welcome Damien Doherty, who is the Chief Inspector for Trading Standards from the Department of Economy, and Mark McGregor from the Trade Windsor Framework Branch, the Department of Economy. Will we proceed?
Yeah.
Just, you're very much welcome, Damien and Mark, and just whenever you're ready, if you could brief the committee. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Chair. Thank you, members. I'll provide a short overview of Directive 2026/706, amending Directive 2014/32/EU, as regards measuring systems for electric vehicle supply equipment, compressed gas dispensers, and electric gas and thermal meters, which I will now refer to as the Directive. I'll focus on the substance of the Act, the key changes it introduces. At the outset, though, I should note that the Directive concerns non-devolved matters. As a result, the Department for Economy has limited subject matter knowledge and competence in this area. We have therefore relied heavily on the support of the Office of Product Standards and Safety within the Department of Business and Trade to assist us in meeting the Committee's requirements. The assessments provided and our responses to any questions draw on OPS's policy and technical expertise. To turn to the context and purpose of the directive is published as a published replacement act which amends an existing measuring instrument directive, often referred to as the MID. The MID sets harmonised EU standards for measuring instruments that are used for commercial transactions, public interest measurements and consumer protection, for example, electricity, gas and heat meters. The Commission brought this proposal forward because the MID had remained largely unchanged for more than 2 decades. During that time, new technologies and new uses have emerged, which were either not covered at all or only partially covered by the existing framework. The risk identified by the EU was increasing fragmentation of national rules and a loss of legal certainty for manufacturers, operators and consumers. On what the directive does, the directive is a targeted technical amendment rather than a wholesale rewrite of the MID. Its core purpose is to update the scope and technical requirements of the directive so that it clearly applies to modern usage technologies. In particular, the directive brings the following into scope or clarifies their treatment. Electrical vehicle supply equipment, often referred to EVSE, where electricity is supplied to a vehicle and billed based on measured quantity. Compressed gas dispensers, including hydrogen. Thermal meters used for cooling, and updated requirements for electricity and gas meters, including direct current measurement and smart meter functionality. The key changes to note: there are several key features of the adopted directive that are particularly relevant. First, the directive introduces dedicated annexes for EVSEs and compressed gas dispensers. This provides a clear legal basis for conformity assessment and market surveillance, which did not previously exist in a harmonised form. Second, it updates essential requirements across a number of instrument categories to reflect modern technologies, including remote or app-based displays, provided that consumer access to information and tamper protection are maintained. Third, it strengthens legal certainty around certificates and notified bodies. The directive clarifies the validity of existing certificates and allows conformity assessment bodies to be notified and to issue certificates ahead of an application date where they already meet the new requirements. On the entry into force, transposition and application, the directive has been formally adopted and enters into force shortly after publication in the official journal. Member States are required to transpose the directive by the 10th of April 2028, with new requirements applying from the 10th of August 2028. There are also transitional provisions. In particular, EVSEs and compressed gas dispensers placed on the market under existing national rules before April 2030 may continue to be made available and used. Certificates issued under the existing framework may remain valid, subject to an ultimate long-stop date in 2038. On the relevance to Northern Ireland under the Windsor framework, the Measuring Instruments Directive, as applied by this Act, would apply in Northern Ireland subject to any democratic scrutiny. This means that the updated EU requirements would need to be implemented in Northern Ireland law and applied to relevant measuring instruments placed on the Northern Ireland market. The UK Government Explanatory Memorandum confirms that implementation expected to be achieved through amendments to the Measuring Instrument Regulations 2016, using powers under the Product Regulation and Metrology Act 2025. To close the overview, in summary, this is a technical but important update to the EU's metrology framework. It responds to the growth of electric vehicle charging, alternative fuels and smart metering, while seeking to preserve consumer protection and market confidence. You'd submitted some questions to the department in advance, and I'll turn to those now. You'd asked guidance from the UKG, Office for Product Standards and Safety, states the measuring instrument regulations currently apply across the UK, but some provisions apply differently in Northern Ireland. How would the application of the Replacement EU Act affect any current GBNI regulatory divergence or alignment? The answer provided by OPSS was under the terms of the Windsor Framework, the new directive will apply to Northern Ireland. This will introduce new elements. The scope of the directive has been extended and the regulations in NI will apply to a wider range of products such as direct current meters, gas calorific value determining devices, and introduce new display options for gas and electricity meters. The Government is already taking steps to explore the benefits of having a consistent UK regulatory landscape, starting with its plans to lay a statutory instrument in 2026 to enable active electrical energy meters that are not utility meters to have remote-only displays, and that will come into force in 2027 with a 30-month transition deadline for the directive. As the UK Government has set out, it will also be reviewing all other new measures included in the new directive to see whether implementing similar measures would benefit the whole of the UK internal market. The review will be informed by a call for evidence that the Department for Business and Trade plans to issue later this year, alongside a full programme of stakeholder engagement, which will include detailed consideration of whether GB should match the EU measures, including whether to also apply a remote display option to domestic gas and electricity utility meters. As noted, there's a 30-month transition deadline that allows for similar measures to come into force in Great Britain before such updates apply to Northern Ireland. Your second question was, what impact is that likely to have on industry and or consumers in Northern Ireland? The Government is already taking steps to explore the benefits of having a consistent UK regulatory landscape by launching a call for evidence, and therefore does not anticipate negative impacts for industry and or consumers in NI. This is especially the case as industry will have ample time to adapt as the result of the 30-month transition period from when the directive enters into force on the 9th of April 2026. Your third question asked, how does that compare with the likely impact of not applying the Replacement EU Act in Northern Ireland? The potential benefits for consumers and businesses would not be realised if the new requirements were not applied in Northern Ireland. Anticipated business benefits, including simplifying compliance for manufacturers, operating costs across both the GB and EU markets, reducing design complexity and enabling more efficient product development and trade. For consumers, anticipated benefits include better access to flexible energy supply services and tariffs, and an ability to monitor uses digitally, better at reflecting existing consumer behaviour. The UK Government is considering applying similar measures in GB and has already committed to adopting a similar measure on the display screen equipment for smart energy appliances. We're unable to comment further on the impact here, as no formal assessment of impact has been undertaken by the UK Government for this directive. On your fourth question, you asked, in its EM, the proposed EU Act, UKG previously stated that it will review whether equivalent measures in GB would best serve the UK's interests, and indicated the Product Regulation and Metrology Act would allow it to amend the mirror regulations accordingly. Has UKG provided any further update in relation to this? The original EM was provided in April 25. In February 26, the Government published a response to their consultation on measuring instruments display requirements for ESAs on gov.uk. This indicated an intention to implement in GB an option similar to that in the new directive to allow certain electricity meters, such as those used at EV charging points and heat pumps, to have remote-only displays. The response also noted that the Government is considering all measures in the new directive and whether similar provisions may be appropriate for the GB market. The decision on whether to implement similar measures in GB will be informed by a call for evidence that they plan to issue later this year. Your fifth question asks, would application of the Replacement EU Act have any impact on GB-based businesses who wish to export products to NI? The UK Government is already taking steps to explore the benefits of a consistent UK regulatory landscape and therefore does not anticipate negative impacts on industry and or consumers in NI. This is especially the case as industry will have ample time to adapt as a result of a 30-month transition period. Longer transition regimes, up to 4 years, will be permitted for electricity vehicle supply equipment and compressed gas dispensers. The Government is already committed to adopt a similar measure on the display screen equipment and will be issuing the call for evidence this year to determine the remaining requirements in the new directive and if they should be considered for the GB market. Your sixth question asks, has the UKG highlighted any risks or problems that might arise from the Replacement EU Act applying in Northern Ireland, and if so, what mitigations has it proposed? The UK Government has not identified any risks or problems arising from the Replacement Act applying. It's already taking steps to explore the benefits of having a consistent UK regulatory landscape, starting with an SI, statutory instrument, to adopt measures concerning the remote display option for energy smart appliances in MERS requirements, essential requirements later this year, followed by a call for evidence. Your seventh question asked, has UKG highlighted any likely benefits of a replaced EU Act applying in Northern Ireland? If so, what is the assessment of those benefits? On that area, there has been no assessment undertaken by the United Kingdom Government. The eighth question, can you provide any details of any engagement that's taken place on the Replacement EU Act and potentially impacted stakeholders? On the first aspect of that, there was a question about new EU legislation included in the government's recent consultation measuring instrument display requirements for ESAs. The scope of the consultation, which received 42 responses, covered GB only, and given its timing, the comments related to the Commission's draft proposal and not the final text. On the second point on impacted stakeholders, measuring instrument industry, energy, smart appliance sector, public charge points for electricity vehicle manufacturers, emerging industries such as business engaged in providing alternate fuels, dispensers are areas that have been engaged on. And I believe this is the final question, number 9. If any engagement has taken place, what potential benefits, risks or costs to businesses and other consumers have been highlighted? Some limited engagement on the EU draft proposal was undertaken through the inclusion of a question in the government's earlier consultation. In particular, industry stated that alignment between the MIR and the MID would simplify compliance for manufacturers operating across both the GB and EU markets, reducing design complexity and eliminating the need for separate hardware variants, enabling more efficient product development and trade. Respondents also suggested that alignment would support business growth and would reduce administrative burdens, as they will be able to supply the same product to both markets. The consultation also highlighted that the UK Government's proposal to amend for GB the physical display requirement in MIR for active electrical energy meters within smart appliances would deliver tangible benefits to businesses and consumers. Introducing the option for remote display alongside the integrated physical display would give manufacturers flexibility to supply ESAs with or without physical displays based on consumer preference. This approach reflects modern consumer behaviour, including increasing reduced remote and digital interfaces. This approach also aligns with the new directive, amending MID. Therefore, it will help preserve the functioning of the UK internal market while enabling innovation and consumer choice. Benefits and risks to businesses and consumers will be explored further in the call for evidence on applying similar measures in GB that they propose to publish later this year. That concludes our evidence this morning, and we're very happy to take any further questions.
Thank you, Mark. I'm just going to open to the floor for members, and we have Steve Aiken. Steve?
Yeah, thank you very much indeed, Chair, and thanks very much indeed, team, for giving the evidence. Just a couple of questions. Obviously, the issues with smart meters is of great interest, particularly to the Northern Ireland reform of the Northern Ireland electricity market. How much have we interacted with the utility regulator to ask whether the sort of any changes in these regulations will impact on what they're trying to do with the rollout of smart metering? That's the first question. The second question and declaration out of interest, I'm thinking about buying an electric car and I want a home charging unit. When Her Majesty's government turns around and says does not anticipate, the does not bit always gets me a bit concerned. Has there been any communications between yourselves and the installers of electricity charging units in Northern Ireland? And if there was any approach to do that, when would you likely to do that? Because I would quite like to have an answer on that. And also the final one is, it does say about there's like a 30-month transition period where they're expecting GB to align with the European Union on a lot of these issues, but there are some things that haven't been explicitly said that they're not going to do. So I just want to know if you have any views on those, or if you had any information on those. Over to you, those three, please.
I'll maybe take the first one, and maybe Damien can come in on the second one. In relation to engagement with the utility regulator, we had engaged with the utility regulator via our energy division in DFE at the proposal stage. They had no concerns expressed at that time, and there's been limited change. We have reached out to them again via the contact branch within DFE, but because of the short turnarounds, we haven't had a response from the utility regulator on the update as of yet. Obviously, we had 5 days from notification of the adopted act to get the material to yourselves. We are waiting for that coming in, and if there is any substantive comment, we'll forward that on to members when we receive it. But from the comment included in the briefing at the proposal stage, the utility regulator comment was included there, and there hasn't been much change since then.
Yeah, I would quite like it. If John French has got any views on it at all, no matter what they are, I wouldn't mind seeing them.
Yes, we'll follow up and we'll send that through in writing.
Yeah.
I'll start with the third question on the does not anticipate. Obviously, the conversations and engagement we've had with the Office of Product Safety and Standards seems to be that they are going to be looking at everything in the round in terms of this directive. There doesn't appear to be any indication to us. In fact, it appears to be the opposite, that whenever they consult on this, it'll be all elements of the directive. I think in terms of the sort of industry engagement that we would have, it would be very much that this is welcome. It creates harmonisation, it creates standards, it ensures that there's no divergence between Northern Ireland and GB, and I suppose that's what the Product Regulation and Metrology Act was brought in by the UK government to do. On the second question, in terms of engagement with, or in terms of the smart appliances, I think we'd have to take that back to our energy colleagues to get some guidance from them. Unfortunately, I can't answer that outside my remit, Steve.
If you could, because funny enough, just over the last couple of days, I've been out sort of around every sort of car dealers in the countryside trying to talk about various things. And when we're talking about smart meters, and they keep on talking about EV charging units and sort of some of the EU regulations that are coming in, and they were saying they couldn't source some of them coming in from GB, and they were having issues with it as well. So I mean, and once they heard I sat in the Windsor Framework Committee, I now know more about home charging units than I even thought it possible knowing about. But I do know about quite a lot about them, so I just thought I'd raise that question with the officials in front of us.
Thank you, Steve. Any other members have any questions for Mark or Damien?
Chair?
Peter and then Jonathan.
That's great. Thank you very much, gentlemen, for joining us this morning. Just want to ask a question regarding the EM. It's the EM from the 31st of March, and it's paragraph 13. I just want to, you may have it there. I'll read it out and then just ask my question. The final text adds clarity on the existing scope of the MID and also brings more measuring instruments in scope of the MID for the first time. MID will now apply to EVSE, compressed gas dispensers, DC electricity meters, modern gas meter measurement, including hydrogen energy conversion devices, gas calorific value determining devices, and thermal energy meters for cooling. The changes also reflect modern performance requirements and technological developments, so the directive better reflects digitized, automated, and emerging energy systems. Of that list that I read out, because there's some reference to retrofitting or the requirement not to retrofit with this directive coming in terms of the list that I read out, are they subject to retrofitting or not? That's my first question.
Unfortunately, the answer for that would require subject matter expertise, so we'll have to take that away to the Office of Product Standards and Safety and bring the answer back to you in writing immediately. We'll contact them, we leave the meeting and should have that with you, by tomorrow with a fair wind. But because we're moving into the technical details about the type of meters and retrofitting and the like, I think we need the subject matter experts to give the answer.
Okay. No, look, that's fine. I'm happy to take that back in writing. It's just it's quite a significant list, and whilst I understand the scope of the directive and some of the reasons behind it, one of the benefits would be that actually they don't require retrofitting. It'd be quite extensive if the directive was such that actually that list that the EM references did require it. But I didn't know the answer, so I thought it was worth asking, and maybe, Chair, we could get an answer back on that one.
Can I just add, Chair? Sorry, just in the EM it does state that there will be no retrofitting obligations for existing EV charging stations and for existing gas dispensers. So those are measuring instruments that are already in the measuring instrument regulation. So as I say, thankfully that creates no additional costs and burdens for any businesses. So that's just what I think. But we can take and get a more fulsome answer if required.
Yeah. No, look, that would be useful, because obviously the list is a little bit more extensive than those two. But certainly, look, if they're all covered, then that'd be excellent to hear. Do we know what proportion of utility meters in Northern Ireland are remote only?
No, we don't, and that would be a question that would have to be directed at the utility regulator. So if we're having that contact with the utility regulator, we can add that question as well for you.
I think that'd be great if you add that to John's list in terms of things that he might, be able to provide some comment around. The reference to, and the final question here, Chair, the reference to hydrogen compressed gas dispensers being brought in terms of, will that apply? I'm thinking particularly of some manufacturing in Northern Ireland which uses that technology. Is that forming part of this new directive?
It appears to be. It's a new measuring instrument. Essentially, it's akin to a petrol pump for compressed gas. So again, that's emerging technologies, sustainable energy sources. In terms of the specific technical side of it, I can't answer. Again, it's outside the scope of trade and standards measuring instruments. But we can go back to the Office of Product Safety and Standards, who will be able to give us more information on that.
Okay. Maybe one more quick one, Chair, if I may. It's just regarding departmental engagement, and it is. I'm just gonna see if I can find the document it's part of. I came in. It's a ministerial submission. It's on page 7 of our table packs, and it makes reference. DFI obviously have been consulted, and DFI have sort of more or less said they're not overly interested, whilst they are moving towards decarbonisation. They don't own, operate, maintain, or regulate the commercial charge point, where I assume the electricity comes from. They said at the end, DFI officials feel that the energy supply element in the proposed replacement act would sit with DFE and the utility regulator / Sony and NIE networks. Just on the basis of that, what direct consultation have you had with colleagues in DFI regarding the point I just made?
We've engaged with DFI throughout the process to make them aware of what the regulation is, the areas it covers, and they identify if they had any form of policy interest, obviously because of the transport nature of electric vehicle charging. I think what they're really setting out is that this aspect of the policy is not within their remit. The electricity getting to the meter falls to the energy side, and the product regulation falls to the Office of Product Standards and Safety. So their interest in the electric vehicles market isn't impacted by that. And I think that was an indication of them trying to be clear that they don't have responsibility in this area. It's DFE you'll need to be consulting with.
Okay, that's great. Thank you very much, gentlemen. Thank you, Chair.
Hey, Peter. Jonathan?
Thank you, Chair. I'm just checking you can hear me.
Yes.
Peter there has covered largely what I was going to ask. I suppose just to add on top of that, UKG had previously said that they would consult on making similar changes as you've outlined, but it wasn't covering all aspects and proposals included in the directive. Do you have an update on the current state of play with regards to that?
No, we haven't seen the outlined text of a consultation, other than knowing it's intended to launch shortly and to run for 12 weeks. Normally, what would happen in instances like that, we would be shared a copy in advance and asked if we wanted to add anything or to expand on any of the questions that are involved. But as of yet, we haven't seen any of the detail that will be prepared in OPSS.
Okay, and obviously the last time you guys appeared before the committee in relation to this, there were many of the questions that you personally weren't able to answer. Obviously, it was with the Department of Business and Trade to give more specifics. They have given a submission since that. And I suppose probably when I look at the original answers from yourselves in terms of you couldn't answer, and I look then at the written answers now supplied, again, it's the same question of, well, we'll hope to potentially align on this matter. We're going out for a call for evidence that will show if there is any issues, but that's not much good to me as somebody that has to make a decision that, well, I'll make the decision today. The call for evidence could show evidence to suggest that it would cause problems in particular parts of industry here in Northern Ireland or for the consumer, but I've already made the decision, so therefore it doesn't really matter. So I just want to point out that particular flaw. A call for evidence to see how it disrupts GB&I trade, discuss how that might have an impact on that consumer chain from GB&I. It's not much good for me after the fact of making a decision, but that's not your problem. It's just something I wanted to highlight. Thanks.
Okay, thank you, Jonathan.
Just the comment on it, you know, there may be value at some points in the department revisiting these matters for you, because there are areas where we've given these reassurances in the past in the like of eco-design and energy efficiency, but we are now seeing the consultation has completed and the secondary legislation is being made. So, you know, UKG is delivering on the commitments that they're making there, and I'm just wondering if, you know, occasionally sharing those outcomes would be reassuring to members.
Yeah, just to follow up, I do think that would be helpful, particularly where it has worked out, but there always is the risk. I'm proceeding at risk as a committee member in taking UKG at their word that they will do as they say. They haven't done so in times past. I'm not guaranteed that that will happen in the future, and there's no telling that perhaps there is issues that happen between a decision being made at this committee and something going through without particular care and consideration, and ultimately then there's no ability to change track or decision.
Okay. There's no other final questions, and thank you, Mark, for that offer as well. And I'm sure members would appreciate that, even for an update. I know it's not our role, it's about implementation, but it would be useful for members as well. So thank you for that. So on behalf of the committee, can I thank Damien and Mark for your presentation, and both of you have a lovely Easter. Thank you.
You too. Bye-bye.
So members, under paragraph 8.1 of Schedule 6B to the 1998 Act, the committee must decide today whether or not to hold an inquiry into the published Replacement EU Act that has been notified. Should the committee fail to decide, the failure will be treated as a decision not to hold an inquiry. So can I ask, having had regard to the legal advice this morning on whether it appears likely that the Replacement EU Act significantly differs in whole or in part from the content or scope of the EU instruments which it amends or replaces, and the departmental assessment on whether it appears likely that the Replacement Act would have a significant impact specific to everyday life of communities here in a way that is liable to persist, can I ask members, do they wish to hold an inquiry into Regulation EU 2026-706?
Chair, could I propose that we hold an inquiry, because I think there's just quite a few uncertainties there, and I would like to have a bit more information from some of the key stakeholders.
Chair, I would happily second that. I think getting some information from the utility regulator and some of the questions that we've asked today, obviously we'll get some information back on, but I think there's enough there probably to monitor this with an inquiry.
Okay, Owen?
Chair, I'm opposed to an inquiry for a number of reasons. First of all, we've already had indications that UK government is seeking alignment, so it's very clear from the evidence we've received today that not to apply this regulation would result in divergence, where potentially GB and the EU are aligned, but Northern Ireland is left out of that alignment, which would be the worst of all worlds, and I think we're very clear on that today. We also, whilst some members have asked questions about the utility regulator's assessment, we have in our pack an initial assessment from the Department of the Economy in 2025, where the utility regulator states clearly they do not foresee any negative impact as a result of this regulation. And I also have to say, Chair, I find it pretty galling that we're sitting here today questioning whether we trust the UK government to align, when many of the same parties that are exercised today fought against dynamic alignment, fought against participation in the single market, and so I don't believe not applying this regulation or doing an inquiry into considering that would be productive, but I do think that all of us individually as members should continue to lobby the UK government to seek the alignment through the metrology and bill and regulation, because I think that would be the best outcome. But I think the evidence has been really clear, and I don't think there's any point in us doing inquiries when we've already had as much information as the departments can give us in relation to these issues.
Okay. There's no other comments.
Yeah, Chair, can I just make a comment, because obviously that was a barbed comment towards my last question to officials. I think it's pretty clear, and I have been on record since the beginning of this committee, that the way in which UKG have conducted themselves, whether it's alignment or not aligning, I'm interested in what the outcome is for the people of Northern Ireland, and I make no bones for asking officials whether what UKG say they will do and what they do aligns, and that is something that's going to require continual interrogation from this committee. Owen may wish to throw the barbed comments, but I'll certainly want to get the best for consumers here in Northern Ireland.
Right, so I'm just going to go for a vote. So Steve had a proposal, seconded by Peter. So all those in favour of an inquiry, could you raise your
Aye.
hands? Is Stephen there?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. All those against?
Okay, so the question was to conduct an inquiry into Directive EU 2006-706 measuring instruments. Ayes, we have Stephen Dunn, Jonathan Buckley, Peter Martin, Steve Aiken. 4. Noes, we have Ciara Ferguson, Padraig Delargley, Owen Tennyson and Kate Nichols. 4, so the proposal falls. Therefore, there will be no inquiry.
Thank you, members. We'll now just move to where we left off. Item
business.
number 9, if I can refer members to item number 9 in your packs. Just remember, at our meeting on the 8th of January 2026, the committee agreed Secretary of Staff should attend this year's Balmoral show to showcase the work of the committee, with members to attend if available on an informal basis. Just to inform members that the committee has been allocated a slot at the show on Wednesday the 13th from 4:30 to 6. And if members are content to note. Yeah, thank you, members. I'm now going to just invite Jessica to speak about a suggested update to the committee's agreed templates for assessments of impact. Jessica?
Thanks, Chair. So this is just a kind of brief suggestion for the template that the committee routinely sends when requesting an assessment of impact from departments. So currently it doesn't include anything specifically about stakeholder engagement. So the suggestion is just to include a brief note on that in the template under departmental engagement. And at the moment that talks about meetings with the Assembly, UK Government or EU institutions, but not about stakeholder engagement. So that's something that's obviously brought up quite often and included in written questions. So it might just mean the committee had that information a bit earlier. And so that's just a suggested change, and that would apply to the templates for both published and proposed EU acts and new and replacement EU acts, if the committee agreed to it.
Okay.
Yeah, Chair, I would support that, and thank you, Jessica, for proposing that. I think that would be very useful.
Are members content? I think, yes, that's quite sensible, to update the templates as proposed. So thank you, Jessica. Can I refer members now to the travel proposal for the committee's visit to Westminster, pages 14 to 18 of your tabled papers, and I'm going to invite Chris to speak about the committee's proposed visit to Westminster. Thank you, Chris.
Thank you, Chair. So last month, members had agreed that in order to schedule the committee's trip to Westminster, we would consult with Cabinet Office officials regarding date availability that might allow us to engage with both the Secretary of State for Northern Ireland and the Paymaster General and Minister for the Cabinet Office. Members will have noted from email correspondence last week that availability for that engagement has been put forward for the week after the committee will be returning from Brussels, namely on the 28th, Tuesday the 28th of April. Most members have now indicated availability for that, and therefore, as you pointed out, Chair, you'll see that at page 14 there's a formal travel proposal. Page 14, sorry, of your table papers, there's a formal travel proposal there. Now, the committee had also wished to explore engaging with the House of Commons Northern Ireland Affairs Committee and the House of Lords Northern Ireland Scrutiny Committee as part of that visit. And given that both committees generally sit on a Wednesday, the proposal envisages an overnight stay from the 28th to the 29th, with the potential for informal engagement with both of those committees on the Wednesday before flying back. That being said, you'll note that it is possible Parliament will be prorogued during that week ahead of the state opening on the 13th of May. There hasn't been any formal confirmation of the date of prorogation yet. But if it was to be that week, it may make it less feasible to secure engagements with either of those two committees. With that in mind, Chair, and noting that the Easter break is coming up, I would propose to make travel arrangements now in order to secure the meeting with the two UK government ministers, but book our flights and our hotel just on a flexible basis. That would mean that if it becomes clear nearer to the time that it won't be possible to meet with the two Westminster committees, we can simply return on the Tuesday again after engaging with the UK government. With that said, Chair, I'd welcome your views and the views of members just on the proposal broadly and on that potential approach.
Okay, thank you. Any views or thoughts from members?
Chair, consent.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's sensible. So there is that flexibility then if those meetings on the Wednesday can't take place. Yeah. Okay, I think members are content. Thank you. So we're going to move on now to item number 10. Do members have any other business? No. So item number 11, date, time and place of next meeting. Just remind members that the committee requested a pause in notifications for today, therefore there will be no meeting of the committee next week. And the next meeting is provisionally scheduled to take place on Thursday the 16th at 10 AM in room 30 in Parliament Buildings. So that is the meeting adjourned, members. So can I thank you all and have a lovely Easter.
Committee Room 30. Sound. 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 Committee Room 30, 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 sound.